The heart monitor flatlined at 11:47 p.m., and for 3 full seconds, no one in the emergency department moved. The attending physician was yelling into his phone about staffing shortages. 2 residents were arguing over tablet readings. A nurse's aide stood frozen, staring at the screen like it might reboot itself. And in the corner, by the supply cart, Emily Carter, the quiet night nurse everyone ignored, was already reaching for the crash cart when the charge nurse grabbed her wrist. "Don't!" the woman hissed. "Dr. Vance is handling it." Dr. Vance wasn't handling anything. He was still on the phone. Emily looked at the patient, a middle-aged man, face gray, chest still, and then at the clock. She had about 40 seconds before brain damage became irreversible. "He's coding," she said, calm and clear. "We can see that," someone snapped. Security was walking toward her. She'd been written up twice this month for overstepping. One more, and she was out. But she knew something they didn't. Before we go any further, if you want to see how this story ends, if you want to know what happens when the truth comes out and everything flips, stay with me until the very last word, and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story can travel. The Riverside Regional Medical Center sat on the edge of Millerton, a mid-sized city in the Pacific Northwest that still smelled like rain and old timber mills. It was the kind of place where people knew the names of their mail carriers, and the hospital's reputation mattered more than its equipment budget. Riverside wasn't flashy, it was functional, and for the last 6 months it had been drowning. Budget cuts, staff turnover, a new administration that cared more about quarterly reports than patient outcomes. The emergency department ran on fumes and the goodwill of nurses who'd been there long enough to remember when things worked. Emily Carter was not one of those nurses. She transferred in from out of state 3 months ago, picked up night shifts no one else wanted, kept her head down, did her job. She didn't socialize, didn't join the group chats, didn't complain when she got stuck with the worst assignments or the patients no one else had time for. She showed up, worked, left. That was it. And because she was quiet, because she didn't have the local connections or the years of seniority, people assumed she didn't matter. Dr. Marcus Vance assumed that most of all. He was the senior attending in the ED, 15 years deep, well-liked by administration because he closed cases fast and never made waves. He had a habit of talking over nurses, especially the new ones, especially the ones who didn't push back. Emily had learned that in her first week when she'd suggested a different pain protocol for a trauma patient, and he'd cut her off mid-sentence. "I didn't ask for input," he'd said, not even looking at her. She hadn't offered any since. Tonight, the ED was a disaster. A multi-car pileup on the interstate had flooded them with patients 2 hours ago, and they were still playing catch-up. Every bay was full. The waiting room had people sitting on the floor. 2 nurses had called in sick, and the resident on duty looked like he was one code away from a breakdown. Emily was assigned to the overflow section, a hallway near the loading dock where they'd set up temporary gurneys for lower priority cases. It wasn't official. It wasn't even safe. But it was where they put people when there was nowhere else. The man in Bay 7 had come in with chest pain. Moderate, stable, not urgent enough for the main floor. A triage nurse had slapped a monitor on him, started an IV, told him someone would check on him soon. That had been 40 minutes ago. Emily had walked past him twice. Both times something felt off. His color wasn't right. His breathing was shallow, uneven. The monitor said his vitals were holding, but monitors lied when the leads weren't placed correctly, when the patient was too still, when no one was actually looking. She stopped the 3rd time. "Sir?" She leaned over the gurney. "Can you hear me?" His eyes were half open, unfocused. She checked the IV line, barely flowing. The saline bag was kinked against the rail. She adjusted it, checked his pulse manually. Weak, irregular. "Hey!" She called toward the main floor. No one turned. She pulled out her penlight, checked his pupils. Sluggish. That wasn't chest pain. That was something worse. She moved fast, repositioned the monitor leads, checked the readout. The numbers jumped. Oxygen saturation dropping. Heart rate spiking, then crashing. "I need a doctor over here," she called, louder this time. A resident glanced back, annoyed. "We're slammed. He's stable." "He's not." "The monitor says..." "The monitor's wrong." The resident turned away. Emily looked at the man's face again. His lips were turning blue. She grabbed the crash cart from the wall and rolled it over. The noise got people's attention. The charge nurse, Karen Presley, a woman who'd been at Riverside since the 90s and ran the ED like a personal fiefdom, marched over, face tight. "What are you doing?" "He's crashing." "The monitor shows stable." "The leads were placed wrong. Look at him." Karen glanced at the patient, then back at Emily, eyes hard. Dr. Vance cleared him. "If you have a concern, you log it. You don't pull the crash cart and cause a scene." "He doesn't have time for a log." "Carter," Karen's voice dropped, cold and final. "You've been here 3 months. You don't override the attending. You don't make calls. You assist. That's it." Emily didn't move. Karen's hand went to her radio. "Security to overflow bay. Now." The patient's breathing stopped. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant wail of an ambulance pulling in. Then the monitor went flatline. Emily didn't wait. She tilted the man's head back, checked his airway, started compressions. Hard and fast, the way she'd done 100 times before. Her hands locked, shoulders over the chest, pushing down with enough force to crack ribs if she had to. That was the job. That was what kept people alive. "Get Dr. Vance," she said, not stopping. No one moved. "Now." Karen's face went pale, but she turned and shouted toward the main floor. Footsteps came running. Dr. Vance appeared, phone still in his hand, irritation all over his face until he saw the flat line on the monitor. "What happened?" "Patient coded," Emily said, still doing compressions. "Leads were misplaced, vitals masked, likely MI. I need EPI and the defibrillator." Vance stared at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. Then he snapped into motion, grabbing the defibrillator, but his hands were shaking. The resident was fumbling with the drug cart. The charge nurse stood frozen. Emily kept compressions going, counting in her head. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. Repeat. She didn't look at Vance, didn't look at anyone, just focused on the rhythm, the pressure, the patient. "Epi?" she said. The resident handed it over finally. She paused compressions long enough to push the injection into the IV line, then went right back to chest compressions. "Charge to 200, Vance said, his voice unsteady. Emily pulled back. The defibrillator whined, charged. Vance placed the paddles, hit the button. The patient's body jerked. Nothing. "Again?" Emily said. 300. Vance reset, charged, shocked, still nothing. Emily leaned back in, started compressions again. Her arms burned, but she didn't slow down. Sweat dripped down her temple. The room felt too small, too hot. She could feel people staring, but none of that mattered. "Push another round of epi," she said, "and get me an airway kit." The resident hesitated. "Now," she snapped. He jumped, grabbed the kit, handed it over. Emily intubated the patient in under 10 seconds, smooth and precise, like she'd done it 1,000 times. Because she had. She bagged him manually, keeping oxygen moving while Vance recharged the defibrillator. "Clear," Vance said. Emily stepped back. Shock delivered. This time, the monitor beeped. A rhythm. Faint, but there. Then stronger. The room let out a collective breath. Emily checked the pulse at the carotid. Steady. She checked the monitor. Oxygen sats climbing, heart rate stabilizing. She stepped back, hands still shaking from adrenaline, and let the team take over. Vance started barking orders. Move him to the ICU, get a cardiology consult, run a full panel. The resident and a nurse wheeled the gurney toward the elevator. Karen stood in the corner, arms crossed, face unreadable. Emily peeled off her gloves, tossed them in the trash, and turned to walk back to her station. "Carter." She stopped. Vance was standing there, stethoscope still around his neck, face red. "What the hell was that?" "A code," Emily said quietly. "He was dying." "You don't get to make that call. You're a floor nurse. You don't run codes. You don't intubate. You don't override me." Emily met his eyes, calm. "If I'd waited, he'd be dead." "That's not your decision." "It's not yours either when the patient's flatlining and you're on the phone." The words hung in the air. A few nearby staff members went silent, pretending not to listen. Vance's jaw tightened. "You're done for the night. Go home. I still have 4 hours on my shift." "Not anymore. Karen, get her out of here." Karen stepped forward, face hard. "You heard him. Clock out." Emily looked at the charge nurse, then back at Vance. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice, just nodded once, grabbed her bag from the break room, and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she heard Vance mutter to someone, "I don't care how good she thinks she is. This isn't a battlefield. It's a hospital." Emily pushed through the doors into the cold night air, hands still trembling, and let the rain hit her face. He had no idea. She didn't go home. She sat in her car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the hospital entrance, trying to let the adrenaline drain out of her system. It never really did. Not completely. That was something she'd learned years ago, back when the adrenaline came from different kinds of emergencies, different kinds of dying. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "You okay?" She frowned, didn't reply. Probably a wrong number. Another buzz. "It's Malik, from the ICU." Saw what happened. That was incredible. She remembered him vaguely. A younger nurse transferred in a few weeks ago, always friendly, always got stuck with the worst shifts like she did. She typed back, "Just doing my job." That wasn't just a job. You saved his life. Everyone knows it. She didn't respond. Put the phone down. Stared at the rain streaking down the windshield. The truth was, she had done her job. That was the problem. She'd done it too well. And people like Vance didn't forgive that. They didn't forgive being shown up, especially not by someone they'd already decided didn't matter. She started the engine, pulled out of the lot, and drove home through empty streets. Tick. The next morning, Emily woke to 3 missed calls and a voicemail. She played it while making coffee in her small apartment. 1 bedroom, barely furnished, nothing on the walls. She hadn't bothered decorating. She never stayed anywhere long enough for it to matter. The voicemail was from Karen Presley. "Carter, this is Karen. Don't come in for your shift tonight. Administration wants to meet with you tomorrow at 9 a.m. HR will be present. Don't be late." Emily set the phone down, stared at the coffee maker. She knew what that meant. They were going to fire her. She showed up at 8:55 a.m., dressed in clean scrubs, hair tied back, no makeup. She didn't wear makeup. Didn't see the point. The HR office was on the 3rd floor, tucked behind a maze of administrative hallways that smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. She checked in with the receptionist, sat in a plastic chair, and waited. At 9:10, they called her in. The room was small. A table, 4 chairs, a window with blinds half closed. Sitting across from her were 3 people: Karen Presley, a man in a suit she didn't recognize, and Dr. Vance. The man in the suit spoke first. "Ms. Carter, I'm Richard Dalton, Director of Human Resources. Thank you for coming in." Emily nodded, said nothing. "We're here to discuss the incident that occurred 2 nights ago in the emergency department." "The code," Emily said. "Yes." Dalton folded his hands on the table. "Dr. Vance has submitted a formal report detailing several concerns regarding your conduct." Emily waited. Vance leaned forward. "You overstepped your scope of practice. You initiated a code without physician authorization. You intubated a patient, a procedure you're not certified to perform in this facility. You created a chaotic and unsafe environment." Emily's voice stayed level. "The patient was dying. That's not the point." "That's the only point." Vance's face flushed. "You don't get to decide that. You're not a doctor. I'm a nurse. I saw a patient in distress. I acted. That's my job. Your job," Vance said slowly, "is to follow orders, not make them." Dalton cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, we understand that you acted with good intentions. However, the hospital has protocols for a reason. When those protocols are bypassed, even with a positive outcome, it creates liability. It creates risk. So you're saying I should have let him die?" "That's not what we're saying." "Then what are you saying?" Dalton exchanged a glance with Karen. "We're saying that this incident, combined with previous reports of insubordination, has led us to conclude that this position may not be the right fit for you." Silence. Emily looked at each of them in turn. Karen's face was stone. Vance looked satisfied. Dalton looked uncomfortable, like he wanted this over with. "You're firing me," Emily said. "We're ending your probationary contract," Dalton corrected. "Effective immediately. You'll receive 2 weeks' pay and a neutral reference." Emily didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there, hands folded in her lap, while they watched her, waiting for a reaction. She didn't give them one. Fine, she said quietly. Dalton blinked. That's it? What else do you want me to say? Most people, I'm not most people. She stood. Dalton started to say something about exit paperwork, but she was already walking toward the door. Karen called after her. Carter, you'll need to turn in your badge. Emily stopped, pulled the badge from her pocket, and set it on the table without a word. Then she walked out. She made it to the parking lot before her phone rang. Unknown number again. She almost didn't answer, then something made her stop. Hello? Ms. Carter? A man's voice, clipped and professional. Yeah. This is Captain James Whitmore, U.S. Army Medical Command. I'm calling regarding your service record. Emily froze. I'm sorry, what? Your reserve status is still active. You're listed as IRR, Individual Ready Reserve. We've been trying to reach you for the past 72 hours. I didn't get any messages. We sent them to your last known address. You moved. Emily closed her eyes. I updated my address 6 months ago. It didn't process. That's on us. But that's not why I'm calling. He paused. We need you back. For what? There's been a credentialing issue with one of our contract hospitals, Riverside Regional Medical Center. You're listed as their former employee, and we're conducting a review of their emergency protocols. Your name came up in an incident report. Emily's stomach dropped. What kind of review? The kind that happens when a civilian facility fails to meet federal standards while treating active duty personnel. His voice hardened. Ms. Carter, were you terminated this morning? She didn't answer. I'll take that as a yes. Here's the situation. 2 nights ago, you saved the life of a patient in Riverside's ED. That patient was a Marine Corps staff sergeant on medical leave. His code was missed by attending staff. You intervened. He survived. We have the incident on record. Emily's breath caught. I didn't know he was military. Doesn't matter. He was. And that makes this a federal case. We're reviewing the facility's handling of the incident, and we need your statement. In person. When? Tomorrow. 0900 hours. Riverside Regional, Conference Room B. 2 officers will be present. You don't have to come, but if you don't, the investigation proceeds without your side of the story. Emily leaned against her car, heart pounding. And if I do come, then we hear what actually happened. And the people who tried to bury this, they answer for it. The line went quiet. I'll be there, Emily said. Good. And Carter? Yeah? Bring your service records, all of them. He hung up. Emily stood in the rain, staring at her phone, trying to process what had just happened. She'd been fired, and now the army was coming. She spent the rest of that day digging through boxes in her closet, looking for paperwork she hadn't touched in years. Her discharge papers, medical certifications, training records from Fort Sam Houston, letters of commendation she'd never framed, never shown anyone, never thought she'd need again. The apartment felt smaller with everything spread out on the floor. She sat cross-legged in the middle of it, sorting through a life she'd tried to leave behind. There were photos in one of the boxes, her in fatigues, younger, sharper around the edges. A group shot with her unit, all of them grinning in front of a field hospital somewhere in the desert. She didn't look at those for long. By midnight, she had everything organized in a folder. She set it on the kitchen counter, made herself eat something she didn't taste, and tried to sleep. She didn't. At 7:30 the next morning, she was already dressed and out the door. The drive to Riverside Regional took 12 minutes. She parked in the visitor lot this time, not the employee section. Walked through the main entrance instead of the side door she'd used for months. The lobby was busy, people checking in, families waiting, someone crying quietly in the corner by the vending machines. She didn't look at any of them, just headed straight for the elevators. Conference Room B was on the administrative floor, past the offices where she'd been fired less than 24 hours ago. She found it easily. The door was closed. She knocked twice. Come in. She opened the door. 2 men in army dress uniforms stood near the window. One was older, maybe mid-50s, graying at the temples, posture like he'd been standing at attention his whole life. The other was younger, early 30s, holding a tablet, watching her with sharp eyes. The older one stepped forward, extended his hand. Ms. Carter, Captain James Whitmore. We spoke on the phone. She shook his hand, firm grip, professional. This is Lieutenant Derek Massey, Whitmore said, gesturing to the younger officer. He'll be assisting with the review. Massey nodded at her, didn't smile. Have a seat, Whitmore said. She sat. They sat across from her. Massey set the tablet on the table, opened a file. Whitmore folded his hands and looked at her like he was measuring something. Did you bring your records? He asked. She slid the folder across the table. He opened it, flipped through the pages without expression. Massey leaned over, scanned a few documents, tapped something into the tablet. 3rd Medical Battalion, Whitmore said, not looking up. 2 deployments. Iraq and Afghanistan. Combat medic. Field hospital rotation. Commendations for trauma response under fire. He closed the folder, met her eyes. Why didn't you mention any of this when you applied here? They didn't ask. They didn't ask if you had military experience. They asked if I had ICU experience. I said yes. They asked if I was licensed in the state. I said yes. That was it. Whitmore studied her for a moment. You didn't think your combat medical background was relevant? I thought it might make me look overqualified. Or difficult. She paused. Turns out I was right. Massey glanced up from the tablet. You were fired yesterday. Yes. For saving a patient's life. For overstepping my scope of practice. Which means I did things nurses aren't supposed to do without a doctor's order. I ran a code. I intubated. I made calls. Because the doctor wasn't, Whitmore said. Emily didn't answer. Didn't need to. Whitmore leaned back in his chair. Walk me through what happened. Start from when you first saw the patient. She did. She kept it factual. No emotion, no editorializing. Just the timeline. What she observed, what she did. How the staff responded. How long it took before anyone listened. Massey took notes the whole time. Whitmore didn't move, just listened, face unreadable. When she finished, the room was quiet for a few seconds. And Dr. Vance, Whitmore said. He was the attending? Yes. He wrote you up for insubordination. More than once. For what? Suggesting alternative treatments, questioning medication orders, flagging things that didn't look right. She met his eyes. For not staying quiet. Whitmore's jaw tightened just slightly. How many times did you flag concerns before this incident? 3 that I documented, probably more that I didn't. And how many times were you listened to? None. Massey looked up. None? They told me to stay in my lane, do my job, let the doctors handle the medical decisions. Whitmore's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. He glanced at Massey. Add that to the report. Massey nodded, typed something. Whitmore stood, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot below. Ms. Carter, you're aware that the patient you saved was an active-duty Marine. I wasn't at the time. I found out yesterday when you called. Staff Sergeant Leon Hayes. 12 years of service, 3 combat tours. He was here on medical leave recovering from a training injury. Routine follow-up. Should have been in and out. He turned to face her. Instead, he nearly died because your ED missed a myocardial infarction that was textbook obvious. Emily said nothing. Do you know what happens when a military service member receives substandard care at a civilian facility? Whitmore asked. No. We investigate. And if we find negligence, especially negligence that endangered the life of one of our own, we take action. Federal action. Massey spoke up. This hospital has a contract with the VA. They treat veterans and active duty personnel regularly. That contract requires them to meet federal medical standards. If they don't... He didn't finish the sentence. Whitmore crossed his arms. We've been reviewing incident reports from this facility for the past 6 months. Yours isn't the first red flag, it's just the loudest. Emily's pulse quickened. What are you saying? I'm saying this hospital has a problem, and you were the only person in that room who did your job correctly. He paused. Which is why they fired you, because you made them look bad. The door opened. Richard Dalton walked in, face pale, followed by Dr. Vance and Karen Presley. All 3 of them stopped when they saw the uniforms. Dalton recovered first, forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Gentlemen, I wasn't aware you'd arrived. We weren't expecting... We don't announce federal reviews, Whitmore said flatly. Sit down. Dalton hesitated, glanced at Vance. Vance's face was red already. This is highly irregular, Vance said. We weren't informed that Ms. Carter would be present. Ms. Carter is a material witness in a federal investigation, Whitmore said. She has every right to be here. You, on the other hand, are here because I requested it. Sit down. They sat. Whitmore remained standing, arms still crossed, radiating authority in a way that made the HR director look like a kid called to the principal's office. Let's be clear about why we're here, Whitmore said. 2 nights ago, Staff Sergeant Leon Hayes coded in your emergency department. His condition was missed by your triage team, ignored by your attending physician, and would have resulted in his death if not for the intervention of Ms. Carter, a nurse you subsequently terminated. Dalton opened his mouth. Whitmore raised a hand. I'm not finished. We've reviewed the security footage. We've reviewed the medical records. We've interviewed your staff, and what we found is a pattern of negligence, poor communication, and a work environment that actively discourages nurses from advocating for patient safety. Vance stood up. That's absurd. We run a tight ship here. One incident doesn't... Sit down, doctor. Vance didn't sit. I don't take orders from you. This is my hospital. This is a federally contracted facility, which means I have jurisdiction over any case involving military personnel. And right now you're in violation of at least 3 federal statutes related to patient care standards. So when I tell you to sit down, you sit down. Vance sat. Karen stared at the table. Dalton looked like he wanted to disappear. Whitmore turned to Emily. Ms. Carter, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Do you feel this hospital is a safe environment for patients? Emily looked at Vance, at Karen, at Dalton, then she looked back at Whitmore. No, she said quietly. I don't. Vance's face went purple. That's slander. It's an opinion, Massey said, not looking up from his tablet, and it's consistent with our findings. Whitmore pulled a chair over, sat directly across from Vance. Dr. Vance, how many times did Ms. Carter raise concerns about patient care during her employment here? Vance's mouth opened, closed. I'd have to check. She documented 3 formal complaints. That means there's a paper trail. How many of those complaints were investigated? Silence. I'll answer for you. None. Not one. In fact, according to your own staff, she was written up for raising concerns, told to stay in her lane, told that she was difficult. Does that sound accurate? Vance's jaw worked. She was new. She didn't understand how we do things. How you do things, Whitmore said, voice like iron, almost killed a Marine. So here's what's going to happen. We're launching a full investigation into this facility's emergency protocols. We'll be interviewing every staff member who was present during the incident. We'll be reviewing every complaint Ms. Carter filed, and we'll be auditing every case involving military personnel treated here in the last 12 months. Dalton finally found his voice. Captain, I'm sure we can resolve this. There's nothing to resolve. The investigation is happening. What you need to decide is whether you want to cooperate or whether you want this to become a public spectacle. The room went silent. Whitmore stood. Ms. Carter, you're free to go. We'll be in touch if we need further testimony. Emily stood, grabbed her folder. Wait, Karen said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. She was staring at Emily, face tight. She doesn't even work here anymore. Why does her opinion matter? Whitmore's expression didn't change. Because she's the only person in that room who acted like a medical professional. Everyone else acted like they were protecting themselves. He glanced at Vance. And that's the problem. Emily walked out. Behind her, she heard Dalton start to argue, heard Whitmore shut him down in 2 sentences. The door closed, muffling the voices. She made it to the elevator before her hands started shaking. She didn't go home. She sat in her car again, staring at the folder in her lap, trying to process what had just happened. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? Emily Carter? A woman's voice this time, professional but warm. Yeah. This is Major Linda Graves, Army Nurse Corps. Captain Whitmore asked me to reach out. Do you have a few minutes? Emily closed her eyes. Sure. I've reviewed your service file. Your record is exceptional. You were one of the top medics in your battalion. Your commanding officer recommended you for officer training. You declined. I wanted to stay in the field. I understand, but here's the situation. The Army has a shortage of experienced trauma nurses, especially those with your level of field experience. We're expanding our reserve training programs, and we need people who can teach, people who've been there. Emily's stomach tightened. I'm not looking to go back. I'm not asking you to deploy. I'm asking if you'd consider a training role. Stateside, part-time reserve duty. You'd be teaching new medics how to do what you did 2 nights ago, save lives when everything's going wrong. I'm not a teacher. You don't have to be. You just have to show them what right looks like. Because clearly, the civilian sector doesn't always know. Emily didn't respond. Graves's voice softened. Look, I know you've had a rough couple of days. I know you're probably questioning whether any of this was worth it. But I want you to know something. What you did in that ED, stepping in when no one else would, making the hard call, taking the heat for it, that's what we train people to do. That's the standard. And you held that standard even when everyone around you was telling you to let it go. Emily's throat tightened. The Army doesn't forget people like you, Graves continued, and we don't let people like you disappear. So think about it. If you want to talk more, call me. Anytime. She left a number. Emily wrote it down on the back of a receipt. Thanks, Emily said, voice rough. Thank you, Graves said, for doing the right thing, even when it cost you. The line went dead. Emily sat there for a long time, staring at the number, feeling something shift inside her chest, something she hadn't felt in months. Purpose. The story broke 3 days later. Not in a big way. Not yet. Just a local news website, a small article buried on the second page of the regional section. The headline read, Federal Review launched at Riverside Regional after veteran nearly dies in ER. Emily saw it while scrolling through her phone at a coffee shop. She read the article twice. It didn't name her, didn't name Vance. Just said that the Army Medical Command was investigating an incident involving a Marine who'd received substandard care, and that several staff members had been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. She set her phone down, stared out the window. Her phone buzzed, a text from Malik. Did you see the news? She typed back. Yeah. Everyone's freaking out. Vance got suspended. Karen too. HR's doing interviews with everyone who was working that night. Emily didn't reply. Another text. People are talking about you. They know you're the one who spoke to the feds. And some people think you're a hero. Some people think you're a snitch. Emily almost laughed. What do you think? I think you saved a guy's life and got screwed for it. And now the people who screwed you are paying for it. Sounds fair to me. She put the phone down, finished her coffee, and left. 2 weeks later, the investigation results came back. Emily wasn't there when it happened. She heard about it from Malik, who called her late one night, voice high with disbelief. They shut down the ED, he said. What? Temporary suspension, federal order. They found so many protocol violations they can't even operate until they fix them. And Vance? What about him? Medical board review. They're investigating whether his license should be suspended. Karen's already gone, resigned before they could fire her. And Dalton? Let me guess. Also gone. Forced retirement. The board of directors held an emergency meeting. Half the leadership is out. Emily sat down on her couch, phone pressed to her ear, trying to wrap her head around it. There's more, Malik said. They're bringing in new people, Army consultants. They're restructuring the entire ED, new protocols, new training, and they want to interview you. For what? For a position. They're rebuilding the department from scratch, and they want people who actually know what they're doing. Someone from the board called me yesterday, asked if I had your number. Emily rubbed her face. I don't want to go back there. I get it, but you should at least hear them out. She didn't answer. Emily, Malik said quietly, you changed everything. You know that, right? If you hadn't spoken up, if you hadn't done what you did, none of this would have happened. That place would still be a disaster. People would still be dying. People are always dying, Emily said. Yeah, but not because someone didn't care enough to try. She thought about it for 3 days. Then she called Major Graves back. I want to take the training position, Emily said, if it's still available. It is, Graves said, and Emily could hear the smile in her voice. When can you start? Next month. Good. I'll send you the paperwork. Welcome back, Carter. Emily hung up, set the phone down, and looked around her empty apartment. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like a trap. The hospital called her the next day. Not Dalton, not Vance, someone new. A woman named Dr. Sarah Lindstrom, interim chief of emergency medicine. Ms. Carter, I know you have no reason to trust this place. I know what happened to you was wrong, but I want you to know that we're making changes, real changes. And I'd like to meet with you, if you're willing. No obligation, just a conversation. Emily almost said no. Then she thought about Staff Sergeant Hayes, about the other patients who might not have someone willing to step in. Fine, she said. When? Tomorrow. 10 a.m. My office. Usted. She showed up early. Dr. Lindstrom was younger than she expected, mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. She gestured for Emily to sit, poured 2 cups of coffee, and sat across from her. I read the federal report, Lindstrom said. All of it. I also read your service record. You were a combat medic, 2 deployments, trauma response under fire. Why the hell were you working night shifts in overflow? Emily shrugged. That's where they put me. That's insane. You should have been in the trauma bay. You should have been training residents. She shook her head. This place wasted you, and then punished you for being better than them. So why am I here? Lindstrom leaned forward. Because I want to fix this. I want to rebuild the ED the right way. And I need people who actually give a damn. People who won't back down when something's wrong. People like you. Emily took a sip of coffee. I already accepted a position. Army Reserve training. I know, Graves told me, but that's part-time. You'll still have availability, and I'm not asking you to come back as a floor nurse. I'm offering you a lead trauma nurse position. You'd be running codes, training new staff, making decisions, and you'd report directly to me. No one gets to shut you down. No one gets to ignore you. You see something wrong, you fix it. That's the job. Emily stared at her. Why would you give me that kind of authority? Because you earned it. Because you proved you can do it. And because if I don't put people like you in charge, this place stays broken. Lindstrom set her coffee down. Look, I can't undo what happened to you, but I can make damn sure it doesn't happen again. Not to you, not to anyone. Emily was quiet for a long time. I'll think about it, she said finally. Fair enough? Lindstrom stood, extended her hand again. But don't think too long. I need good people. And you're the best I've seen. Emily left the hospital, walked to her car, and sat behind the wheel for 5 minutes before starting the engine. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She opened it. Ms. Carter, this is Staff Sergeant Leon Hayes. I heard you're the one who saved my life. I don't know how to thank you, but if you ever need anything, you let me know. Semper Fi. Emily stared at the message, throat tight, eyes burning. She typed back, just doing my job. Glad you're okay. His response came fast. You did more than your job. You gave me my life back. That's not something I'll forget. She put the phone down, wiped her eyes, and started driving. 3 days later, she got another call. This time, it was from a lawyer. A woman named Jessica Brennan, representing a whistleblower protection organization. Ms. Carter, I've been following your case. I want to talk to you about filing a wrongful termination lawsuit against Riverside Regional. Emily's stomach dropped. I'm not interested in suing anyone. I understand, but what happened to you was illegal. You were fired for advocating for patient safety. That's protected under both state and federal law. And the hospital needs to be held accountable, not just administratively, but financially. Otherwise, they'll do this to someone else. They're already being investigated by the Army. That handles the medical side. But it doesn't address what they did to you personally, the retaliation, the damage to your career, the fact that you were blacklisted from a profession you're exceptionally qualified for. Emily rubbed her temples. I don't want money. This isn't about money. It's about precedent. If you don't fight this, other hospitals will think they can get away with it. Other nurses will stay silent because they saw what happened to you. Emily closed her eyes. Think about it, Brennan said. I'll send you some information. No pressure, but I want you to know you have legal standing and you have people who will fight for you. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The code, the confrontation, the firing, the investigation, the offers, the lawsuits, all of it because she'd done her job. All of it because she'd refused to let someone die. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another text. This time from Captain Whitmore. Carter. Thought you should know. Vance's medical license was suspended pending board review. Formal charges being filed. You did this. You made the difference. She set the phone down, rolled onto her side, and finally let herself cry. Not from sadness, not from relief, but from something deeper. Something that felt like being seen for the first time in years. The next morning she woke to her phone ringing. She answered without looking. Hello? Emily Carter? A man's voice. Older, rough around the edges. Yeah. This is Colonel Raymond Fisher, Army Medical Command. I need you to come to Fort Lewis today. There's someone here who wants to meet you. Emily sat up. Who? Can't say over the phone, but it's important. Can you be here by noon? She looked at the clock. 800. Yeah, she said. I can be there. Good. Gate security will have your name. Report to Building 12. Ask for me. He hung up. Emily stared at the phone, heart pounding, mind racing. She got dressed, grabbed her keys, and drove north toward Fort Lewis, a massive army base 2 hours outside Millerton. She'd been there once during her active duty, years ago. Hadn't thought she'd ever go back. The drive felt longer than it was. When she arrived, security waved her through after checking her ID. She followed the directions to Building 12, a nondescript administrative structure near the medical center. She parked, walked inside, and found the reception desk. I'm here to see Colonel Fisher, she said. The receptionist nodded, made a call, and a minute later Fisher appeared. A tall man in his 60s, graying hair, uniform decorated with more ribbons than she could count. Carter, he said, shaking her hand. Thanks for coming. Follow me. He led her down a hallway, through a security door, into a conference room. Sitting at the table were two people she didn't recognize, a general in full dress uniform and a woman in civilian clothes, late 50s, sharp eyes. Fisher gestured for her to sit. She did. The general spoke first. Ms. Carter, I'm General Patricia Lawson, Commander of Army Medical Command. This is Dr. Helen Vargas, Director of the Army Nurse Corps. We've been reviewing your case very closely. Emily's mouth went dry. Okay. What you did at Riverside Regional, stepping in when no one else would, making the right call under pressure, holding the standard even when it cost you, that's exactly the kind of leadership we need. Not just in combat zones. Everywhere. Dr. Vargas leaned forward. We want to offer you a direct commission, officer rank, captain. You'd oversee trauma training programs across the Western region. You'd be developing curriculum, mentoring new medics, and serving as a liaison between military and civilian medical facilities. Emily's head spun. I don't have a degree. You have something better, Lawson said. You have experience, you have judgment, and you have the courage to do what's right when everyone else is looking the other way. That's worth more than any degree. Emily stared at them, unable to speak. This is a direct commission under exceptional circumstances, Vargas continued. It's rare, but your case warrants it. You'd start with a 6-month training program at Fort Sam Houston, then move into your permanent assignment. Lawson stood, walked around the table, and looked Emily in the eye. Miss Carter, the Army doesn't forget its own, and we don't let people like you slip away. So I'm asking you directly, will you serve again? Emily's throat closed up. She thought about the code, about Hayes, about the years she'd spent trying to be invisible, trying to fit in, trying to make people listen. She thought about the text from Malik. You changed everything. She looked up at the general. Yes, she said. I will. Lawson smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. Outstanding. Welcome back, Captain Carter. Fisher stepped forward, handed her a folder. Paperwork's inside, read it over, sign it. We'll have you sworn in by the end of the week. Emily took the folder, hands shaking. As she stood to leave, Vargas touched her arm. One more thing. The Marine you saved, Staff Sergeant Hayes, he's here. He asked to meet you. Emily froze. He's here? Building 6. Medical Recovery Wing. He's been asking about you since he woke up. She found him 20 minutes later, sitting in a chair by a window, leg in a cast, reading a book. He looked up when she walked in, and his face broke into a grin. You're her, he said, setting the book down. You're the nurse. Emily nodded, suddenly unsure what to say. Hayes stood, awkwardly, leaning on a crutch, and extended his hand. I owe you my life, literally. The docs told me I was gone. Said, if you hadn't done what you did, I'd be dead. She shook his hand. I'm glad you're okay.
I'm more than okay. I'm alive because you didn't give up. His voice cracked slightly. They told me you got fired for saving me. That true?
It's complicated. It's not complicated. It's bullshit. He sat back down, gestured for her to sit. But I also heard they're making it right, that you're getting your due. Something like that. He studied her for a moment. You know what the hardest part of being a Marine is? She shook her head, knowing that most people will never understand what it means to do the right thing when it costs you everything. But you do. You get it. He paused. So thank you, not just for saving me, for being the kind of person who doesn't back down. Emily's eyes stung. Just doing my job. No, Hayes said quietly. You did more than that, and I won't forget it. But she left Fort Lewis 3 hours later, head spinning, future suddenly wide open in a way it hadn't been in years. Her phone buzzed. A text from Whitmore. Heard the news. Congratulations, Captain. You earned it. Another from Malik. Someone just told me you're going back to the Army as an officer. Is that true? She smiled, typed back. Yeah, it's true. That's incredible. You deserve it. She put the phone down, pulled out of the parking lot, and headed home. But halfway there, she made a detour. Back to Riverside Regional. She parked in the visitor lot, walked through the main entrance, took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Dr. Lindstrom's office was at the end of the hall. The door was open. Lindstrom looked up, surprised. Carter, I wasn't expecting you. Emily stood in the doorway. I'm taking the Army position. Full time. I can't work here. Lindstrom nodded slowly. I figured. Can't say I blame you. But, Emily continued, I'll consult, part-time. Help you rebuild the protocols, train your staff. Make sure this place actually works the way it's supposed to. Lindstrom's face lit up. You do that? On one condition. Name it. If I see something wrong, I fix it. No questions, no pushback, no politics, just medicine. Lindstrom stood, extended her hand. Deal. Emily shook it. As she turned to leave, Lindstrom called after her. Carter? Emily stopped. Thank you, Lindstrom said quietly, for not giving up on this place, even after everything. Emily looked back at her. I didn't do it for the place. I did it for the patients. She walked out, feeling lighter than she had in months. That night, she sat on her couch, staring at the folder of paperwork from the Army, and allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that needed applause. The quiet kind. The kind that came from knowing she'd done the right thing, even when it cost her everything, and that somehow, against all odds, it had been worth it. Her phone buzzed one last time, a text from an unknown number. She opened it. Miss Carter, this is Jessica Brennan. I know you said you're not interested in a lawsuit, but I just received a call from Riverside Regional's legal team. They want to settle. Full reinstatement offer, back pay, formal apology, and policy changes to protect future whistleblowers. They're scared, and they should be. Let me know if you want to talk. Emily stared at the message for a long time. Then she set the phone down, leaned back, and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she'd decide. Tonight, she just wanted to breathe. But as she drifted off to sleep, her phone lit up one more time. A news alert. Breaking. Former Riverside ED doctor faces federal charges in patient neglect case. Military investigation uncovers systemic failures. And beneath the headline, a photo. Dr. Marcus Vance being led out of the courthouse in handcuffs. Emily stared at the photo until the screen went dark. Then she set the phone face down on the coffee table and didn't pick it up again. Sleep came in fragments. She woke twice, once at 300, once at 5:30, and both times her mind went straight to the same place. The crash cart, the flat line, the seconds ticking down while everyone stood there doing nothing. She could still feel the resistance in the patient's chest under her palms, the way his ribs flexed with each compression, the weight of knowing she was the only thing between him and death. By 6:30, she gave up on sleep entirely. Made coffee, stood at the kitchen window watching the sky lighten over Millerton's low skyline. Her phone sat on the counter, screen still dark, but she could feel the weight of the messages waiting inside it. She picked it up. 11 unread texts, 4 voicemails, 2 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. The first voicemail was from Jessica Brennan, the whistleblower lawyer. "Ms. Carter, I need you to call me back as soon as possible. Riverside's legal team reached out again this morning. They're increasing the settlement offer. They want this resolved before the federal charges against Vance go public in a bigger way. Call me." The second was from Malik. "Hey, it's me. I don't know if you've seen the news, but it's everywhere now. Local stations picked it up. Someone leaked the federal report. The whole hospital's in damage control mode. People are asking about you. Thought you should know." The third was from Major Graves. "Carter, we need to move up your start date. There's been a situation at Joint Base Lewis McChord. Mass casualty drill went wrong, multiple injuries, and the response was a mess. Command wants you there next week to assess and rebuild their trauma protocols. I know it's fast, but we need you. Call me back." The fourth was from a number she didn't recognize. She almost deleted it. Then the voice started, and she froze. "Ms. Carter, this is Attorney General Louise Harmon from the State Medical Board. We've been reviewing the findings from the Army's investigation into Riverside Regional, and we're expanding our inquiry into other facilities in the region. We believe this may be a systemic issue, not an isolated incident. I'd like to speak with you about your experience and whether you've observed similar patterns elsewhere. Please return my call at your earliest convenience." Emily set the phone down, hands shaking. This wasn't just about Vance anymore. It wasn't just about one hospital, one patient, one code. It was bigger, and she was in the center of it. She called Brennan first. The lawyer answered on the second ring. "Carter, thank you for calling back. We need to talk strategy." "I don't want a settlement. I understand your hesitation, but hear me out. Riverside is offering full reinstatement, 6 figures in back pay and damages, a formal public apology, and binding policy reforms. They'll establish a whistleblower protection program, mandatory bias training for all senior staff, and an independent review board for patient safety complaints. This isn't just about you, it sets a precedent." Emily rubbed her eyes. "And if I say no, then we go to trial, which could take years. And in the meantime, Riverside's lawyers will do everything they can to discredit you. They'll dig into your service record, your personal life, every decision you've ever made. It won't be pretty." "I've been through worse." "I don't doubt that, but this is different. This is public. This is your name in headlines, your face on the news, every detail of your life picked apart by people who've never met you." Brennan paused. "I'm not saying don't fight. I'm saying think carefully about what you're fighting for." Emily stared out the window. "What do you think I should do?" "I think you should take the settlement, use the money to build something, fund scholarships for nurses, start a patient advocacy organization, make the system better instead of just punishing the people who broke it. And let them off easy. They're not getting off easy. Vance is facing federal charges. The hospital's under investigation. Their reputation is destroyed. You've already won. The question is whether you want to spend the next 2 years in court proving it." Emily closed her eyes. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long. The offer expires in 72 hours. She called Graves next. "Carter," the major said, voice brisk. "Did you get my message?" "Yeah, next week is fast." "I know. But the situation at Lewis McChord is urgent. They ran a mass casualty exercise 2 days ago. Simulated IED blast, multiple casualties, full trauma response. It was supposed to be routine. Instead, it was a disaster. Communications broke down. Triage protocols were ignored. 3 simulated patients would have died because no one knew what the hell they were doing. Simulated patients. This time. But these are the same medics who will be responding to real emergencies, real combat situations. And right now, they're not ready." Graves's voice hardened. "We need someone who can walk into that unit, assess the gaps, and rebuild their protocols from the ground up. Someone who's been there. Someone they'll actually listen to." "Why would they listen to me?" "Because you're not some desk officer who learned trauma medicine from a textbook. You did it under fire. You saved lives when everything was falling apart. That's the kind of credibility you can't fake." She paused. "And because you just took down an entire hospital administration for doing exactly what these medics are doing, ignoring the fundamentals, cutting corners, assuming they know better than they do." Emily leaned against the counter. "When do you need an answer?" "End of day. I'm sorry to push, but we're on a timeline. If you can't do it, I need to find someone else. I'll call you back in 2 hours. Make it 1. The line went dead. She called the Attorney General's office third. A receptionist transferred her, and then Harmon's voice came through, calm and measured. Ms. Carter, thank you for returning my call. I'll get straight to the point. The Army's investigation into Riverside Regional uncovered troubling patterns, understaffing, inadequate oversight, a culture that punishes nurses for raising concerns. We have reason to believe these issues exist at other facilities across the state, and you want me to help you find them. I want you to help us understand what nurses are actually experiencing on the ground. Not what administrators claim in reports, but what's really happening. You were inside that system. You saw how it worked or didn't work. Emily's jaw tightened. I saw a lot of things. Then I'd like to hear about them. Officially. We're opening a broader inquiry into patient safety practices at civilian hospitals that treat military personnel and veterans. Your testimony could be crucial. How many hospitals are we talking about? Right now, 12 in this state alone, potentially more as we expand the investigation. Emily's stomach dropped. 12 hospitals, hundreds of staff members, thousands of patients. What happens if I testify? You'd be deposed, likely multiple times. Your testimony would be part of the public record, and you'd probably be called as a witness if any of these cases go to trial. Harmon's voice softened slightly. I won't lie to you, Ms. Carter. This will be hard. People will come after you. They'll call you a troublemaker, a whistleblower, someone with an axe to grind. But you'll also be protecting patients who can't protect themselves. I need time to think. Take the time you need, but the longer we wait, the more patients are at risk. Emily hung up and sat in silence for 10 minutes. Then her phone rang again. This time it was Colonel Fisher. Carter, we have a problem. Her pulse spiked. What kind of problem? Vance's legal team is filing a countersuit. They're claiming you acted outside your scope of practice, that you endangered the patient with unauthorized interventions, and that the Army's investigation was influenced by your false testimony. Emily's breath caught. That's insane! It's a Hail Mary. They know they're going down, so they're trying to take you with them. It won't work. We have the evidence, we have the witnesses, we have everything documented. But it's going to get ugly. How ugly? Depositions, cross-examinations. They'll try to paint you as a rogue operator who ignored protocols and got lucky. They'll dig into your military record, looking for anything they can use. Any reprimands, any complaints, any mistakes. Emily's hands went cold. I don't have anything to hide. Good, because they're going to look anyway. Fisher paused. The Army will back you. We'll provide legal support. But you need to be prepared for this to get personal. I'm always prepared. I know you are. That's why I'm calling. We're moving your swearing-in ceremony up. Tomorrow morning, 0900 hours, Fort Lewis. We want you officially commissioned before this countersuit gains any traction. Once you're an active duty officer, you'll have full legal protections. They can't touch you the same way. Emily's head spun. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. Can you be there? She looked around her apartment, the bare walls, the unpacked boxes, the life she'd been trying to build out of nothing. Yeah, she said. I'll be there. That night, she couldn't sit still. She paced her apartment for an hour, then gave up and went for a drive. No destination, just movement. She ended up on the outskirts of Millerton, parked at a rest stop overlooking the valley, staring at the lights below. Her phone buzzed, a text from Hayes. Heard about the countersuit. Don't let them get in your head. You did everything right. We all know it. She stared at the message, throat tight. Another text, this time from Malik. People at the hospital are talking. Some are scared, some are angry. But a lot of them are grateful. You showed them it's possible to fight back. That matters. She put the phone down, leaned her head against the steering wheel, and let herself feel the weight of it all. Tomorrow, she'd be an officer. She'd have authority, resources, a platform. But tonight, she was just a nurse who'd done her job and was paying the price for it. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then she did. Hello? Miss Carter? A woman's voice, older, shaking slightly. Yeah. My name is Barbara Hensley. I'm a nurse at St. Augustine Hospital in Portland.
I saw the news about what happened to you at Riverside. Emily straightened. Okay, I need to talk to you about something that happened here, something similar. Her voice cracked. I reported a doctor for negligence 3 months ago. A patient almost died. I filed a formal complaint, and now they're trying to force me out. They're saying I'm insubordinate, that I'm a liability. Emily's pulse quickened. Did you document everything? Yes. Every conversation, every incident, but they don't care. They're protecting him. She paused, crying quietly. I don't know what to do. I don't have the resources to fight them. I don't have the army backing me up like you do. I'm just a nurse. Emily closed her eyes. You're not just anything, and you're not alone. What do I do?
Emily thought for a moment. Then she opened her contacts, found Attorney General Harmon's number, and read it off. Call this number tomorrow morning. Tell them I referred you. Tell them everything. They're investigating cases like yours. Barbara let out a shaky breath. You think they'll listen? I know they will. Thank you. Her voice broke. Thank you. The line went dead. Emily sat there for a long time, staring at the phone, feeling something shift in her chest. This wasn't just about her anymore. It never had been. The swearing-in ceremony was smaller than she expected. Just her, Fisher, General Lawson, and Major Graves in a small office at Fort Lewis. No audience, no cameras. Just a flag, a Bible she didn't touch, and the words of the oath she'd said once before, years ago, in a different life. I, Emily Carter, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Her voice was steady. Her hands didn't shake. When it was done, Lawson pinned the captain's bars on her uniform and stepped back. Welcome back, Captain. Emily looked down at the bars, the weight of them suddenly real. Fisher handed her a folder. Your orders. You're assigned to the Western Regional Medical Command. Your first task is the assessment at Lewis McChord. You have 2 weeks to evaluate their trauma protocols and submit recommendations. After that, we'll discuss your permanent assignment. Understood. Graves stepped forward. There's a briefing in 30 minutes. The unit you'll be assessing is waiting. They don't know who you are yet. They just know they're getting a new training officer. Good, Emily said. Let's keep it that way for now. The briefing room was full. 20 medics, all in uniform, all looking tired and frustrated. They'd clearly been through hell over the past few days, and they weren't happy about being pulled into another meeting. Emily walked in behind Fisher. No one looked at her. They were too busy talking among themselves, complaining about the failed drill, blaming each other for the mistakes. Fisher cleared his throat. Attention. The room went silent. Everyone stood. At ease. Fisher gestured to Emily. This is Captain Carter. She's here to assess your trauma response protocols and identify areas for improvement. You'll be working with her for the next 2 weeks. What she says goes. Any questions? No one spoke. Fisher nodded once. Carry on, Captain. He walked out, leaving Emily alone with 20 sets of eyes staring at her. She set her folder on the table, looked around the room, and spoke clearly. Sit down. They sat. 2 days ago, you ran a mass casualty drill. It was a disaster. Triage protocols were ignored. Communication broke down. 3 patients died who shouldn't have. Does anyone want to tell me why? Silence. I'm not here to write you up, Emily said. I'm here to fix the problem, but I can't fix it if no one talks. A young medic in the back raised his hand hesitantly. We didn't have enough people. The drill was supposed to have 12 responders, but we only had 8, so we were overwhelmed before we even started. That's a resource problem, Emily said. What else? Another medic spoke up, older, more confident. The triage officer froze. He's new. Never been in a real mass casualty situation. When everything started happening at once, he just stopped. So no one took over? We didn't know if we were allowed to. Emily's jaw tightened. Let me be clear about something. In a trauma situation, you don't wait for permission to save lives. If the person in charge isn't leading, someone else steps up. That's the job. The room shifted uncomfortably. Here's what we're going to do, Emily continued. For the next 2 weeks, we're going to run these drills every single day. Multiple scenarios, different conditions, and we're going to keep running them until you can do this in your sleep.
Because when it's real, when people are bleeding out in front of you, you don't have time to think. You just act. A medic in the front row, tall, broad-shouldered, sergeant stripes on his sleeve, leaned back in his chair. With all due respect, ma'am, we've been doing this for years. We know the protocols. Clearly not well enough. His face hardened. You weren't there. You don't know what it was like. You're right, Emily said. I wasn't there, but I've been in situations a lot worse than a drill, and I've seen what happens when people don't know their jobs well enough to do them under pressure. She met his eyes. So here's the deal. You can be defensive and waste my time, or you can listen and get better. Your call. The sergeant stared at her for a long moment. Then he sat up straighter. Yes, ma'am.
Good. We start tomorrow. 600, full gear. First scenario is a convoy ambush with multiple blast injuries. If you're late, you're out. She picked up her folder and walked toward the door. Behind her, she heard someone mutter, "Who the hell is she?" Another voice answered, quieter. "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out." Batik. The first drill was brutal. She threw everything at them. Multiple casualties, limited supplies, communication failures, changing conditions. She made them work in the rain, made them work in the dark, made them work with half the equipment they needed. And she watched who stepped up and who froze, watched who communicated and who panicked, watched who remembered their training and who forgot it the second things got hard. By the end of the first week, 3 medics had requested transfers. The rest were exhausted, bruised, and pissed off. But they were getting better. The sergeant, his name was Rodriguez, cornered her after a particularly difficult scenario. "Captain, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why are you pushing us this hard?" Emily looked at him. "Because someone's life is going to depend on you. And when that moment comes, you won't have time to figure it out. You'll either know what to do or you won't. And if you don't, they die." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "You've seen that happen. More times than I can count." "In combat?" "In combat. In hospitals. Everywhere." She met his eyes. "The settings change, the stakes don't." He was quiet for a moment. "We heard about what happened at Riverside, about you getting fired for saving that Marine." Emily didn't respond. "That's why you're here, isn't it?" Rodriguez said. "Because you actually give a damn. Because you're not just going through the motions." "I'm here because someone has to make sure you're ready." "Yeah," he said quietly. "But most people wouldn't care enough to make it this hard." The second week, everything clicked. The medics moved faster, communicated better, anticipated problems before they happened. Rodriguez took charge during a simulated building collapse and ran the scene flawlessly. The medic who'd frozen during the first drill stepped up during a chemical exposure scenario and made every right call. Emily stood back and watched them work, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time: pride. Not in herself, in them. On the last day, she ran the final test, a full mass casualty scenario with everything going wrong at once. 15 casualties, limited supplies, no communication, injuries ranging from minor to critical. They handled it. Not perfectly, but well enough. When it was over, she gathered them in the briefing room one last time. "You passed," she said, "not because you're perfect, but because you're ready. You know your jobs, you trust each other, and when things go wrong, you don't quit." Rodriguez raised his hand. "What happens now?" "Now you do this for real. And when you do, you remember what you learned here. You don't freeze, you don't panic, you just do the work." She started to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. If you ever see someone cutting corners, ignoring protocols, or putting patients at risk, you speak up, even if it costs you, especially if it costs you. Because that's the job. Not just saving lives, making sure the system works the way it's supposed to." They stood, saluted. She returned it, then walked out. Outside, Graves was waiting. "I heard the final drill went well," she said. "It did." "Good. Because we need you somewhere else." Emily frowned. "Where?" "Riverside Regional. They're reopening the ED next week. Dr. Lindstrom requested you personally. She wants you to oversee the new protocols, make sure they're actually being implemented." "I thought I was just consulting." "You were. Now she wants you full-time, at least for the first 6 months." Graves handed her a tablet. "These are the updated protocols she's proposing. She wants your approval before they go live." Emily scanned the document. Mandatory bias training, independent review boards, whistleblower protections, clear escalation procedures for patient safety concerns. It was everything she'd wanted. What about my training assignment here? You're done. Rodriguez and his team are ready, and honestly, they're better than most units I've seen. You did good work. Emily handed the tablet back. When does Lindstrom need me? Monday. That's 3 days. I know. Can you do it? Emily thought about Riverside, about the ED she'd been fired from, about walking back into a place that had tried to bury her. Yeah, she said. I can do it. That night, Jessica Brennan called again. The settlement deadline is tomorrow. I need your decision. Emily stood at her apartment window, looking out at Millerton's lights. I'm taking it. Brennan let out a breath. Good. I'll have the paperwork ready by noon. But I have a condition. What kind of condition? Part of the settlement money goes into a fund for nurses who get fired for speaking up about patient safety. Legal support, financial assistance, whatever they need to fight back. Brennan was quiet for a moment. That's actually brilliant. I'll add it to the terms. And I want it in writing that Riverside has to report their implementation progress publicly, every quarter, so people can see whether they're actually changing or just pretending to. They won't like that. I don't care. Brennan laughed. I'll make it happen. Anything else? No, that's it. All right. I'll be in touch. The settlement was finalized 2 days later. Emily signed the papers in Brennan's office, surrounded by boxes of legal files and half-empty coffee cups. The check was larger than she'd expected, large enough to fund scholarships, support programs, legal assistance for nurses who needed it. Brennan shook her hand. Congratulations. You just changed the game. We'll see. No, I mean it. This fund you're creating, it's going to save careers, maybe lives. She paused. You could have just taken the money and walked away. Most people would have. I'm not most people. No, Brennan said quietly. You're not. Botet. On Monday morning, Emily walked back into Riverside Regional Medical Center. This time, no one stopped her at the door. No one questioned her badge. No one told her to stay in her lane. Dr. Lindstrom met her in the lobby, extended her hand. Welcome back, Captain Carter. Emily shook it. Let's get to work. They walked through the ED together. It looked different. New equipment, new signage, new faces. The staff who'd been there during the incident were mostly gone. Vance was gone. Karen was gone. Dalton was gone. What remained was a department trying to rebuild itself from the ground up. Lindstrom led her into a conference room. Inside were a dozen nurses and doctors, all waiting. Everyone, Lindstrom said, this is Captain Emily Carter. She'll be overseeing the implementation of our new protocols. What she says is policy. If you have questions, you ask her. If you have concerns, you bring them to her. And if she tells you something needs to change, it changes. Understood? Heads nodded around the room. Lindstrom looked at Emily. All yours. Emily set her folder on the table, looked around at the faces staring back at her, and felt the weight of what she was about to do. Here's how this is going to work, she said. We're going to rebuild this department the right way. That means no shortcuts, no politics, no protecting people who don't belong here. If someone isn't doing their job, they're gone. If someone raises a concern, we listen. And if someone tries to silence a nurse for speaking up, they answer to me. She paused. Let that sink in. This place almost killed a patient because people were too proud to admit they were wrong. That doesn't happen again. Not on my watch. The room was silent. Then a young nurse in the back raised her hand. Captain Carter? Yeah. What if we see something wrong but we're scared to report it? Emily met her eyes. Then you report it anyway, because your fear doesn't matter more than someone's life. The nurse nodded slowly. Emily continued, over the next 6 months, we're going to train every single person in this department. Trauma protocols, communication, triage under pressure. And we're going to keep training until everyone in this room can run a code in their sleep. A doctor in the front row spoke up. What if we already know how to run a code? Then you'll get better at it, Emily said, because knowing how to do something and doing it correctly under pressure are two different things. No one argued. The first month was chaos. Emily ran drills daily, tested every protocol, pushed every staff member to their limits. Some thrived, some cracked, some quit. She didn't stop them. By the second month, the department started to stabilize. The new protocols were working, communication improved, response times dropped. The staff who remained were the ones who wanted to be there, who understood what the job actually required. And slowly, Riverside Regional stopped being a disaster and started being a hospital again. 3 months in, Emily got a call from Attorney General Harmon. We've opened investigations into 8 hospitals based on complaints from nurses who came forward after your case went public. 3 facilities have already been placed under federal review. You started something, Captain Carter. Emily sat in her office, an actual office now, not a locker or a hallway, and stared out the window at the city below. How many more nurses have come forward? 47, and counting. Emily's breath caught. 47? Your story gave them courage, showed them it was possible to fight back and win. Harmon paused. We're going to need your testimony in several of these cases. Are you willing? Emily thought about Barbara Hensley, about the young nurse who'd asked what to do if she was scared, about every nurse who'd been told to stay quiet and decided to speak up anyway. Yes, Emily said. I'm willing. That night, she got a text from an unknown number. She opened it. Captain Carter, this is Dr. Marcus Vance. We need to talk. In person, it's urgent. Emily stared at the message, heart pounding. Then another text came through. I have information about Riverside, about what really happened, about who knew and when. If you want the truth, meet me tomorrow. 8 p.m. The parking garage behind the old courthouse. Come alone. Emily's hands went cold. She stared at the phone, mind racing, trying to decide if this was a trap or something else entirely. Her phone rang. Graves. Carter, we have a problem. Vance's lawyers just filed a motion. They're claiming new evidence has come to light, evidence that exonerates him and implicates you. They're saying you fabricated your testimony to cover up your own mistakes. Emily's stomach dropped. That's impossible. I know, but they're pushing for a hearing, and they want it fast. When? 48 hours? Emily closed her eyes, felt the walls closing in. Carter? You still there? Yeah, she said quietly. I'm here. We'll fight this. We have the evidence. We have the witnesses. They won't win. But what if they do? Graves was quiet for a long moment. Then everything you built falls apart, and they get away with it. Emily hung up, stared at Vance's message on her screen, and made a decision she knew might destroy everything. She texted back, I'll be there. She didn't tell anyone. Not Graves, not Fisher, not Lindstrom. Emily sat in her apartment that night, staring at Vance's message, weighing the risks. Meeting him alone was stupid. Going anywhere near him while his countersuit was pending was dangerous. But if he actually had information, something that proved who else at Riverside had known about the negligence, who'd helped cover it up, then she needed to hear it. She texted Malik instead. Need a favor. Don't ask questions. He replied immediately, What do you need? Tomorrow night, 7:45 p.m. Park your car across from the old courthouse parking garage. Keep your phone on. If I don't text you by 8:30, call the police. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Are you serious? Yes. What are you doing? Something stupid. Just be there. Emily. Please. A long pause. Then, I'll be there. She set the phone down and tried to sleep. Didn't work. Her mind kept running scenarios. What Vance might say, what he might want, what trap he might be setting. By 0400, she gave up, made coffee, and started going through every document she had from the night of the code. Medical records, incident reports, her own handwritten notes from the shift. She memorized the timeline again, every detail, every decision, so that if Vance tried to twist the facts, she'd know exactly where he was lying. At 600, her phone rang. Graves. We need to talk. Now. Emily's stomach tightened. What happened? Vance's lawyers filed a supplemental motion overnight. They're claiming they have a witness who saw you administer medication without authorization. Someone who'll testify you made critical errors during the code and tried to cover them up by blaming Vance.
That's a lie. I know it's a lie, but they have a signed affidavit.
We don't know who the witness is yet. The name's redacted pending the hearing, but it's someone from inside the hospital. Emily's hands went cold. Someone who was there that night. Most likely. Then they're either being paid to lie or they're covering their own ass.
Probably both. But we need to figure out who it is before the hearing. If we can discredit the witness, their whole case falls apart.
Graves paused. Do you have any idea who it could be? Emily thought back to that night. Who'd been in the room? Who'd watched? Who'd stayed silent when everything went wrong?
I have some ideas, she said quietly.
Good. Write them down. Send them to me. We'll start digging. Emily hung up and stared at the wall, mind racing. Someone from the hospital was lying for Vance. Someone who'd rather destroy her than admit they'd screwed up. And in 12 hours, she'd be standing in a parking garage alone with the man at the center of it all. The day dragged. She went to Riverside, ran through protocols with the staff, reviewed incident reports, tried to act normal. But her mind was somewhere else. At 1600 hours, Lindstrom stopped her in the hallway. Carter, you okay? You seem off today. I'm fine. You're not fine. What's going on? Emily met her eyes. Vance's legal team has a witness, someone from the hospital, someone who's willing to lie under oath to save him. Lindstrom's face went pale. Who?
I don't know yet, but when I find out, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what they did. Be careful. If Vance is desperate enough to fabricate evidence, he's dangerous.
I know.
Lindstrom studied her for a long moment. You're meeting him, aren't you? Emily didn't answer. Jesus, Emily, that's insane. Maybe. But I need to hear what he has to say. And if it's a trap, then I'll deal with it. Lindstrom shook her head. You're one of the best trauma nurses I've ever seen. Don't do something stupid and throw it all away. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finishing what I started. Plus.
At 1945 hours, Emily pulled into the parking garage behind the old courthouse. The building had been abandoned for years, waiting for a developer that never came. The garage was empty except for a few rusted cars that hadn't moved in months. Concrete pillars cast long shadows in the dim overhead lights. The place smelled like oil and decay. She parked on the second level, left the engine running, and texted Malik. I'm here. His reply came instantly. I'm across the street. I can see the entrance. Be careful. She turned off the engine, got out, and stood by her car, scanning the shadows. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Vance appeared, walking slowly, hands in his pockets. He looked thinner than she remembered, older. His face was drawn, eyes hollow. He wasn't wearing his doctor's coat, just jeans and a jacket that hung loose on his frame. He stopped 10 feet away. You came, he said. You said you had information.
I do.
He glanced around, nervous. But first I need you to understand something. I didn't want any of this. I didn't want that Marine to almost die. I didn't want you to get fired. I didn't want the federal investigation. But you let it all happen. Because I was scared. His voice cracked. I was scared of losing my license, my career, everything I'd built. So you threw me under the bus. Yes. He looked at the ground. And I'm sorry. Emily crossed her arms. Is that why you brought me here? To apologize? No. He reached into his jacket pocket. Emily tensed, hand moving toward her phone, but he pulled out a USB drive. I brought you here to give you this. What is it?
Emails, internal memos, documentation from Riverside's administration. He held it out. Proof that they knew the ED was understaffed and dangerous. Proof that they ignored complaints from multiple nurses, not just you. Proof that they covered it up to protect their budget. Emily stared at the drive. Why are you giving this to me? Because they're going to destroy me anyway. My career's over. My license is getting suspended. My reputation is gone. But at least I can take them down with me. His hand shook. Dalton, Karen, the board of directors. They all knew. They all decided it was cheaper to risk patients than to hire more staff. Emily took the drive slowly. If this is real, why didn't you give it to the Army investigators? Because I was still hoping I could save myself. I thought if I blamed you, if I made it look like you were the problem, they'd let me off. He laughed bitterly. But then my lawyers told me the witness they found, someone who's willing to lie for me, is being paid by the hospital, not by me, by them. And I realized they're not trying to save me. They're trying to save themselves. Emily's pulse quickened. Who's the witness? Vance met her eyes. Dr. Trevor Ashford. He was the resident on duty that night. He froze during the code. You probably don't even remember him. He was in the corner the whole time, doing nothing. But now he's saying you gave the wrong medication, that you caused the patient to crash. Emily's jaw clenched. That's a lie. I know, but the hospital's paying him $50,000 to say it. And if he testifies, it'll look like there were multiple people who saw you screw up. It'll destroy your credibility. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of being their scapegoat. And because what you did that night, stepping in when no one else would, that was the right thing. I should have backed you up. I should have admitted I missed the diagnosis, but I didn't. And now I have to live with that. He stepped back. That drive has everything you need. Use it. He turned and walked toward the stairwell. Emily called after him. Vance? He stopped, didn't turn around. What happens to you now? I don't know. Maybe I start over somewhere else. Maybe I don't. He glanced back over his shoulder. But at least I can say I did one thing right. Then he disappeared into the shadows. Emily stood there, holding the USB drive, trying to process what had just happened. Her phone buzzed. Malik. You okay? I saw someone leave. She texted back. I'm fine. Heading out now. She got in her car, locked the doors, and sat there for a minute, staring at the drive in her hand. Then she called Graves. I have something you need to see. Well, 2 hours later, Emily was sitting in a secure conference room at Fort Lewis with Graves, Fisher, and 2 Army attorneys. The contents of the USB drive were displayed on a screen. Emails, budget reports, internal memos, all of it damning. One email from Richard Dalton to the hospital's board of directors, dated 3 months before the incident. We've received another complaint from ED nursing staff regarding understaffing and unsafe patient ratios. I recommend we table this discussion until Q3 when we have more budget flexibility. In the meantime, let's tighten supervision on nurses who file excessive complaints. Another memo from Karen Presley to her supervisors. Carter has flagged 3 patient safety concerns in the past 2 weeks. I've spoken with Dr. Vance. We agree she's overstepping her role. Recommend we document these incidents as insubordination to establish grounds for termination if needed. Graves read through the documents in silence, face getting harder with each page. They were planning to fire you before the code even happened, she said quietly. Because I wouldn't shut up. Fisher leaned back in his chair. This changes everything. We can prove the hospital administration knew about the unsafe conditions. We can prove they retaliated against you for reporting them. And we can prove they're paying Ashford to commit perjury. One of the attorneys spoke up. We need to move fast. The hearing is tomorrow. If we enter this evidence, it'll blow their case apart. But we need to verify the source first. Make sure it's authentic. It's authentic, Emily said. Vance gave it to me. Graves frowned. Why would he do that? Because they're throwing him under the bus. And he's smart enough to know it. Fisher stood, paced the room. All right, here's what we do. We enter this evidence first thing tomorrow morning. We request an emergency motion to compel testimony from Dalton, Karen Presley, and the board members whose names appear in these documents. And we file formal charges against Ashford for perjury and conspiracy. What about Vance? Emily asked. His charges stand. But if he cooperates fully, testifies against the hospital administration, provides additional documentation, we might recommend leniency. Fisher met her eyes. He doesn't get off free, but he gets credit for coming forward. Emily nodded slowly. Fair enough. Graves closed the laptop. Get some sleep, Carter. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. But she didn't sleep. She went back to her apartment, made coffee, and sat at her kitchen table going over everything one more time. The timeline, the evidence, the faces of everyone who'd tried to bury her. At 300, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Captain Carter, this is Trevor Ashford. We need to talk before the hearing. I made a mistake. I need to tell you the truth. Emily stared at the message, pulse spiking. She called Graves immediately. Ashford just reached out. He wants to talk. Don't respond. It's a trap. They're trying to get you to say something they can use against you. Or he's having second thoughts.
Either way, you don't meet him. You don't text him. You let the lawyers handle it. Emily hung up, but kept staring at the message. If Ashford was having second thoughts, if there was a chance he'd tell the truth. Her phone rang. Ashford's number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Hello? Captain Carter. His voice was shaking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They told me if I didn't testify, they'd destroy my career. They said you were going down anyway, that my testimony wouldn't matter, that I was just protecting myself. But I can't do it. I can't lie under oath. Then don't. They'll come after me. They'll make sure I never work in medicine again. They're already coming after you. The Army has evidence that you're being paid to commit perjury. If you testify tomorrow and lie, you're going to prison. But if you tell the truth, if you testify about what the hospital offered you, what they threatened you with, you might have a chance. Silence on the other end. Dr. Ashford, Emily said quietly. I know you're scared. I know you think you're protecting yourself, but lying won't save you. It'll just make everything worse. What do I do? You call the Army's legal team. You tell them everything, and you testify to the truth tomorrow. That's the only way out. He was crying now, quiet and broken. I didn't want this. I just wanted to be a doctor. Then be one. Do the right thing. The line went dead. Emily sat there, phone in her hand, hoping she'd gotten through to him. The hearing started at 9 a.m. The federal courthouse in downtown Millerton was packed. Reporters in the hallway, cameras outside, protesters holding signs that read, "Protect whistleblowers," and "Justice for nurses." Emily walked in with Graves and Fisher, flanked by Army attorneys. Across the room, Vance's legal team sat with their client, looking smug. Behind them were representatives from Riverside Regional, lawyers, board members, all dressed like they were attending a funeral. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Be seated. Let's begin. Vance's lead attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit named Gregory Holt, stood immediately. Your Honor, we're requesting an emergency continuance. Our key witness has failed to appear. The judge frowned. Which witness? Dr. Trevor Ashford. He was scheduled to provide testimony regarding Captain Carter's conduct during the incident in question. We've been unable to reach him. The Army's attorney stood. Your Honor, Dr. Ashford contacted Captain Carter last night. He informed her that he was being coerced by Riverside Regional's administration to provide false testimony in exchange for financial compensation. We have a recording of that conversation, which we're prepared to submit as evidence. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Order! Counselor, did you just say false testimony? Yes, Your Honor. We have documentation proving that Riverside Regional offered Dr. Ashford $50,000 to testify against Captain Carter. We also have emails and internal memos showing that the hospital's leadership orchestrated this scheme to avoid liability for their own negligence. Holt shot to his feet. This is outrageous. Sit down, Mr. Holt. The judge's voice was ice. I want to see this evidence now. The Army's attorney approached the bench with a folder. The judge read in silence for 3 minutes. His face darkened with every page. Mr. Holt, the judge said slowly, did you know your client's defense was based on fabricated testimony? Your Honor, we were operating on information provided to us in good faith. That's not what I asked. Did you know? Holt's mouth opened, closed. No, Your Honor. Then you have my sympathy, because you're about to be named in a bar complaint. He looked at the Riverside representatives. Who authorized the payment to Dr. Ashford? No one spoke. I'm waiting. A man in the back row stood reluctantly. Your Honor, I'm Lawrence Brennan, chairman of Riverside Regional's board of directors. We were advised by counsel that offering a settlement to Dr. Ashford to ensure his testimony was consistent with hospital records was legally permissible. Consistent with hospital records or consistent with your preferred narrative? Brennan's face went red. Your Honor. Save it. I'm issuing a bench warrant for Dr. Ashford to appear and testify under oath about what he was offered and by whom. I'm also ordering a full audit of Riverside Regional's financial records related to this case, and I'm referring this matter to the State Attorney General for criminal investigation into witness tampering and perjury. He looked at Vance's legal team. As for your motion to dismiss charges against Dr. Vance and implicate Captain Carter, denied. In fact, based on the evidence presented here today, I'm inclined to dismiss Dr. Vance's countersuit entirely and award sanctions against Riverside Regional Medical Center. Holt stood again, looking desperate. Your Honor, if we could just— You're done, Counselor. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Reporters rushed the doors. Riverside's lawyers surrounded Brennan, faces panicked. Vance sat alone at his table, staring at nothing. Emily stood, legs shaking, trying to process what had just happened. Graves touched her arm. You won. Emily looked at her. It's not over yet. It is for them. By that afternoon, the story was everywhere. Local news, national outlets, social media exploding with threads about corporate healthcare negligence, whistleblower retaliation, nurses being silenced. Emily's phone rang nonstop. Interview requests, support messages, offers from advocacy organizations. She ignored all of it. Instead, she went to Riverside Regional. Lindstrom met her at the entrance. You're everywhere. The board's in emergency session. Half of them are resigning. The other half are lawyering up. Good. There's more. The state medical board just announced they're expanding their investigation. They're looking at every hospital in the region that receives federal funding. Your case opened the floodgates. Emily nodded, feeling the weight of it. How many nurses have come forward? Last I heard, over 100. Emily's breath caught. Lindstrom walked her inside through the ED that was slowly becoming functional again. Staff members stopped when they saw her. Some nodded, some smiled. One older nurse, a woman Emily barely knew, walked up and hugged her without saying a word. You changed everything, Lindstrom said quietly. You know that, right? Emily didn't respond. They reached her office. Lindstrom handed her a folder. This came for you this morning from Staff Sergeant Hayes. Emily opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten. Captain Carter, I heard about the hearing. I heard what they tried to do to you. And I wanted you to know that if you ever need a witness, if you ever need someone to stand up and say what you did for me, I'm there. No questions asked. You gave me my life back. The least I can do is help you protect yours. Semper Fi, Leon Hayes. Emily folded the letter carefully, tucked it into her jacket pocket. What happens now? Lindstrom asked. Now we keep working. We keep training. We make sure this place never goes back to what it was. And the lawsuits? The investigations? Those will take care of themselves. That night, Emily got a call from Attorney General Harmon. Captain Carter, I wanted to personally thank you. The evidence you provided today has given us everything we need to prosecute not just Riverside, but several other facilities. We're looking at systemic corruption, financial fraud, and widespread patient safety violations. This is going to be the largest healthcare investigation in state history. How long will it take? Years. But we're committed to seeing it through, and we're going to need your continued cooperation. You have it. There's something else. We're recommending that the governor establish a statewide patient safety commission, independent oversight, mandatory reporting, whistleblower protections with teeth, and we want you to sit on the advisory board. Emily was quiet for a moment. I'm not a politician. We don't need politicians. We need people who've been in the trenches, people who know what actually works and what doesn't. People like you. I'll think about it. Please do, because if we're going to fix this system, we need voices like yours at the table. A week later, Emily was sitting in her office at Riverside when Malik knocked on the door. Got a minute? Yeah, come in. He sat down looking nervous. I heard you're leaving. Who told you that? Graves. She said you're transferring to a new assignment, something in Washington, D.C. Emily nodded. Medical Command wants me to help develop national training standards. It's a 3-year posting. So you're really going? Yeah. Malik was quiet for a moment. This place won't be the same without you. This place will be fine. You've got good people now, good protocols. Lindstrom's solid. You don't need me anymore. Maybe. But people look up to you. You showed them it's possible to stand up and not get destroyed for it. Emily looked out the window at the city below. Some of us do get destroyed. I just got lucky. That wasn't luck. That was you refusing to back down. She didn't respond. Malik stood. For what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't stay quiet. I'm glad you fought. Because if you hadn't, I'd probably still be working in a place that didn't give a damn about patients, and I'd hate myself for it. He left before she could say anything. Bob. On her last day at Riverside, the staff threw her a small gathering in the break room. Nothing fancy, just coffee and donuts and a card everyone had signed. Lindstrom gave a short speech. Captain Carter came to us at our worst moment. She could have walked away. She could have let this place burn. But she didn't. She stayed. She fought. And she showed us what real leadership looks like. We're better because of her, and we'll carry that forward. Everyone clapped.
Emily stood feeling awkward and exposed. I'm not good at speeches, but I want to say something. What happened here, the negligence, the retaliation, the cover-ups, that wasn't unique to Riverside. It's happening everywhere. And the only way it stops is if people like you refuse to let it continue. So if you see something wrong, you speak up. If someone tries to silence you, you get louder. And if they try to destroy you for it, you fight back. Because that's the job. Not just saving lives, making sure the system works the way it's supposed to. She looked around the room at faces that had become familiar. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for doing the work. Keep it going. She walked out into the hallway, and Rodriguez was waiting there. He'd driven down from Fort Lewis to see her off. Captain, he said, saluting. She returned it. Rodriguez, what are you doing here? Wanted to thank you in person. My unit's been getting recognition because of the training you did. Command's using us as the model for other bases. That's all you. I just showed you what you already knew. No, you showed us what it looks like when someone actually cares. That's different. He extended his hand. Good luck in D.C. They're lucky to have you. She shook his hand. Take care of your medics. Always.
2 days later, Emily was packing up her apartment when her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? Captain Carter? This is Barbara Hensley. We spoke months ago. I'm the nurse from Portland. Emily remembered. The woman who'd called her, terrified, asking for help. I remember. How are you? I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I wanted you to know. I testified. I gave my statement to the Attorney General's office. And because of that, they opened an investigation into my hospital. 3 doctors have been suspended, the administration is being audited, and I got my job back. Emily's throat tightened. That's incredible. It wouldn't have happened without you. You gave me the courage to speak up. You showed me it was possible to fight and win. Her voice cracked. So, thank you for everything. You did the hard part. You told the truth. Because you went first. They talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. Emily set the phone down and sat on the floor, surrounded by half-packed boxes, feeling something shift inside her. She'd thought this was about one patient, one hospital, one fight, but it had never been that small. But the flight to D.C. left early the next morning. Emily arrived at the airport 2 hours early, checked her bag, went through security. She was sitting at the gate, drinking bad coffee, when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. Captain Carter, this is Dr. Marcus Vance. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know. I testified yesterday. I gave the prosecutors everything. Names, dates, documents. I'm cooperating fully. My license is gone. My career is over. But at least I'm telling the truth now. I hope that counts for something. Thank you for giving me the chance to do the right thing, even if it's too late. Emily stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, It's never too late. Good luck. She deleted the conversation and boarded her flight. 3 months into her assignment at Medical Command Headquarters in D.C., Emily got a call from General Lawson. Captain Carter, I need you in my office, now. Emily's stomach dropped. Yes, ma'am. She walked across the compound, mind racing through everything that could have gone wrong. Lawson's office was on the top floor, overlooking the Potomac. She was standing by the window when Emily entered. Close the door. Emily did. Lawson turned, face unreadable. I just got off the phone with the Secretary of Defense. He's been following your case. The Riverside investigation, the state inquiries, the national attention. Emily's pulse quickened. He wants to meet you, Lawson continued. He's considering a proposal to establish a federal patient safety task force, military and civilian hospitals combined, national standards, oversight, accountability, and he wants you to lead it.
Emily couldn't speak. This would be a promotion to major. You'd be running a team of 30 investigators and medical professionals. Your job would be to identify failing facilities, document negligence, and implement corrective action. Essentially, you'd be doing what you did at Riverside, but on a national scale. I'm not qualified for that. You're the only person qualified for that. You've done it, you've lived it, and you've proven you can handle the pressure. Lawson sat down behind her desk. This is a once-in-a-career opportunity, Carter, but it's also a target on your back. The healthcare industry will fight you every step of the way. Politicians will try to bury you, and some people will hate you for exposing what they've been hiding. Emily met her eyes. When do I start? Lawson smiled. That's what I wanted to hear. You start in 30 days. Use that time to get your affairs in order, because once this goes public, your life changes. That night, Emily sat in her small D.C. apartment, barely furnished, barely lived in, and stared at her phone. She scrolled through messages from the past few months, from Malik, from Hayes, from nurses she'd never met, thanking her for speaking up, from families of patients who'd been harmed by negligence, asking for help. She thought about the night at Riverside when she'd stepped forward to run that code, knowing it might cost her everything. It had, but it had also given her something she'd lost years ago, a reason to keep fighting. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then she did. Captain Carter? A woman's voice, young, scared. Yes. My name is Rachel Torres. I'm a nurse in Chicago. I reported a doctor for malpractice 3 weeks ago. They fired me yesterday. Someone told me to call you. They said you'd know what to do. Emily closed her eyes, felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders again. Tell me everything, she said. And as Rachel started talking, Emily grabbed a notebook and started writing, knowing this was just the beginning. Because the fight wasn't over. It was just getting started. The next morning, Emily received an encrypted email. The subject line read, "Urgent, evidence enclosed." She opened it. Inside was a single attachment, a video file, time-stamped from the night of the code at Riverside. Security footage she'd never seen before. She downloaded it, hit play. The angle was from above, showing the overflow bay where Staff Sergeant Hayes had been. The timestamp showed 11:46 p.m., 1 minute before he coded. In the frame, Dr. Vance walked past the gurney, glanced at the monitor, and kept walking. 30 seconds later, he looked back. The monitor clearly showed abnormal readings. He stared at it for 5 seconds, then he turned and walked away. Emily's blood went cold. The video continued. Hayes flatlined at 11:47. Emily appeared, started compressions. But in the background, partially obscured by a pillar, someone else stood watching. Karen Presley. She stood there for 12 seconds while Emily worked. Then she turned and walked toward the main floor, toward Dr. Vance. And the two of them had a brief conversation. Vance shook his head. Karen nodded. Both of them turned their backs to the code. The timestamp showed 11:48 when they finally responded to Emily's call for help, a full minute after the patient had flatlined. The video ended. Emily sat frozen, staring at the screen. They'd watched him die. Both of them. And they'd waited just long enough that if Emily hadn't stepped in, Hayes would have been unsavable. And no one would have questioned why. A new email appeared. You need to see this before the final hearing. They knew. They both knew. And they let it happen. A friend. Emily's hand shook as she forwarded the video to Graves, to Fisher, to the Attorney General's office. Her phone rang immediately. Graves. Where did you get this? Someone sent it to me. I don't know who. This changes everything. If Vance and Karen deliberately delayed response to a coding patient, it's not negligence anymore. It's something worse. We need to get this in front of the judge. Today. 48 hours later, Emily stood in the same courtroom, watching as the video played on a screen for everyone to see. The judge watched in silence. The Riverside legal team sat rigid, faces pale. Vance stared at the floor. When the video ended, the judge removed his glasses and spoke quietly. Dr. Vance, Ms. Presley, you stood there and watched a patient flatline. You delayed response for over 60 seconds, and then you blamed the person who saved him. He looked at them with something close to disgust. I've seen a lot of things in this courtroom, but this is beyond negligence. This is criminal. He turned to the prosecutors.
I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal charges. Both defendants are to surrender their medical credentials immediately pending trial. Vance's lawyer stood. Your Honor.
Sit down. I'm not finished. The judge looked at Emily. Captain Carter, I owe you an apology. This court initially entertained a case against you that should never have been filed. Your actions that night were exemplary. You are a credit to your profession and your service. And on behalf of this court, I thank you. Emily nodded, unable to speak.
This case is closed. Sanctions are awarded to Captain Carter and the U.S. Army Medical Command. Riverside Regional Medical Center is ordered to pay damages totaling $5 million to be distributed to patient safety initiatives and whistleblower support programs. He banged the gavel. We're adjourned. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed the aisle. Cameras flashed. Emily stood, turned, and walked out into the hallway. Graves caught up with her. You did it. You actually did it.
We did it.
No, this was you. From beginning to end. Emily looked back through the courtroom doors at Vance being led away by federal marshals, at the Riverside lawyers gathering their papers with shaking hands. It's finally over, Graves said. But Emily's phone buzzed. Another message. Another nurse. Another hospital. Another fight. She looked at Graves and shook her head. No, she said quietly. It's just beginning. Emily read the message while standing in the courthouse hallway, surrounded by reporters shouting questions she didn't answer. The text was from Rachel Torres, the Chicago nurse who'd called 2 nights ago. They just fired 3 more nurses. We're all scared. What do we do? Emily typed back quickly. Document everything. I'm on my way. Graves saw her expression. What is it? Chicago. Multiple nurses being retaliated against. I need to go. Carter, you just won. Take a breath. Take a day. People don't have a day. Emily pocketed her phone. This is what we do now. This is the job. Graves studied her for a moment, then nodded. I'll clear it with Lawson. How long do you need? A week, maybe 2. You've got it, Haas. Emily flew out that afternoon. Chicago's Grant Memorial Hospital sat in a neighborhood that reminded her of Riverside, worn around the edges, underfunded, serving people who had nowhere else to go. She met Rachel Torres in a coffee shop 3 blocks away, a small place where the staff wouldn't recognize them. Rachel was younger than Emily had expected, maybe 27, with tired eyes and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She had a folder full of documents, incident reports, text messages, emails, all of it organized with the precision of someone who'd been taught to chart patient care.
They're doing exactly what happened to you, Rachel said quietly. We report safety concerns. They write us up for insubordination. We push back. They threaten our licenses. And now they're firing us one by one, saying we're creating a hostile work environment. Emily flipped through the documents. The patterns were identical. Understaffing. Ignored complaints. Nurses being punished for speaking up. And underneath it all, the same calculation. It was cheaper to silence workers than to fix the problems. How many nurses have been fired? Emily asked. 3 in the past month. 5 more have been written up. And at least a dozen are keeping their heads down because they can't afford to lose their jobs. What about the patients? Rachel's face tightened. 2 codes in the past 3 weeks, both preventable. Both missed by attending physicians who were too overwhelmed to notice. We caught them, but barely. Emily closed the folder. I need access to the hospital. Can you get me inside? As what? A visiting consultant. Tell your supervisor I'm from the Army Medical Command, conducting a routine assessment of facilities that treat veterans. Don't mention my name, just schedule me for tomorrow morning. Rachel nodded slowly. They'll recognize you. Your face has been all over the news. Then we'll see how honest they really are.
Emily walked into Grant Memorial at 800 the next morning, wearing her dress uniform, captain's bars polished, service ribbons visible. She signed in at the front desk, showed her military ID, and was directed to the administrative wing. The director of nursing, a thin woman named Patricia Kemp with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, met her in the hallway. Captain Carter, what a surprise. We weren't expecting anyone from medical command. Routine assessment, should only take a few hours. Of course. Though I have to say we're all quite familiar with your recent activities. The Riverside case made quite an impression. Emily met her gaze. I imagine it did. Kemp's smile faltered. Well, Let me show you to the ED. They walked through corridors that felt too quiet, too empty. Emily counted beds as they passed. At least a third were unstaffed. The nurses who were working moved with the exhausted efficiency of people running on fumes. In the emergency department, Emily counted 4 nurses for 26 patients. The ratio should have been 1 to 4 at most. Here, it was closer to 1 to 7. She pulled out a tablet, started making notes. Kemp watched nervously. Is there a problem? Your staffing ratios are dangerously low. How long has it been like this? We're operating within state guidelines. State guidelines are minimums, not best practices. And even those minimums require safe patient-to-nurse ratios during peak hours. This isn't safe. We've had some recent turnover. You fired 3 nurses in the past month for reporting safety concerns. That's not turnover, that's retaliation. Kemp's face went pale. I don't know where you heard that, but I heard it from the nurses you're trying to silence. The ones who are still here, terrified they'll be next. Emily closed the tablet. Here's what's going to happen. I'm conducting a full assessment of this facility. I'll be interviewing staff, reviewing incident reports, and examining your policies on whistleblower protections. And then I'm going to file a report with the federal government detailing every violation I find. You can't just... Actually, I can. This hospital receives federal funding for veteran care. That makes it subject to federal oversight. And right now, you're failing to meet basic safety standards. Emily stepped closer. So you have 2 choices. You can cooperate, make changes, and fix this before people die. Or you can fight me, and I promise you'll lose, because I've done this before and I know exactly how it ends. Kemp stared at her, face red. I need to consult with our legal team. You do that. I'll be in the ED talking to your staff. Emily spent the next 6 hours interviewing nurses. She heard the same stories over and over. Ignored safety concerns, impossible workloads, doctors who talked over them, dismissed their expertise, blamed them when things went wrong, and underneath it all, the constant threat, speak up and lose your job. One nurse, an older woman named Susan, who'd been there for 20 years, cried while describing a patient who'd died because no one had time to check on him during a shift change. I knew something was wrong, she said, voice breaking, but I had 6 other patients crashing at the same time. By the time I got back to him, it was too late, and the hospital blamed me, said I should have managed my time better. Emily handed her a tissue. It wasn't your fault. But I was his nurse. I was responsible. You were set up to fail. They gave you an impossible situation and then blamed you when you couldn't do the impossible. Emily leaned forward. That's not medicine. That's a system designed to protect itself at your expense. Susan wiped her eyes. What do we do? You tell the truth, all of you, on the record, and then we make sure everyone knows what's happening here. By the end of the week, Emily had documented 43 safety violations. She filed her report with the Army Medical Command, the State Health Department, and the Attorney General's office. She included testimony from 17 nurses, incident reports from the past year, and staffing data that proved the hospital had been operating below minimum standards for months. 3 days later, federal investigators arrived. 2 days after that, Grant Memorial's administration was placed under emergency oversight. Patricia Kemp resigned. The chief medical officer was suspended pending investigation, and the hospital was given 60 days to implement corrective action or lose its federal funding. Rachel called Emily the night the news broke. They're bringing in temporary staff. They're reopening investigations into the deaths that happened on our shifts. And they're offering reinstatement to everyone who was fired. She paused. You did this. You came here and you fixed it. I didn't fix anything. I just made sure people couldn't ignore it anymore. That's the same thing. Emily was quiet for a moment. How are the other nurses? Cautiously hopeful, scared it won't last, but hopeful. Tell them to document everything, keep records, because the fight doesn't end when the oversight team leaves. It ends when the culture actually changes. I will. Rachel hesitated. Can I ask you something? Yeah. Does it ever get easier, standing up like this, knowing people will come after you? Emily thought about Riverside, about the firing, about standing in that parking garage with Vance, wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. No, she said honestly. It doesn't get easier, but it gets more important, and eventually you realize that's enough. Emily returned to D.C. the next week and dove into her new role. The Federal Patient Safety Task Force was real now, fully funded, with authority to investigate any hospital receiving federal money. Emily's team grew to 35 people: investigators, medical professionals, legal experts. Her office was in a nondescript building near Walter Reed, and her days became a blur of reports, site visits, and conference calls with state health departments. Within 6 months, they'd opened investigations into 22 hospitals. Within a year, that number tripled. Some facilities cooperated, made changes, welcomed the oversight. Others fought back, hired expensive lawyers, tried to discredit Emily and her team. It didn't matter. The evidence was there. The patterns were clear. And one by one, failing systems were exposed and forced to change. Emily testified before Congress twice. She spoke at medical conferences. She trained hospital administrators on whistleblower protections. And every time she stood in front of a room full of people, she told the same story about a night in Riverside when she'd done her job and been punished for it, and how that one moment had revealed a sickness in the system that went far deeper than anyone wanted to admit. The work was exhausting. The attacks were constant. Politicians accused her of overreach. Hospital lobbyists called her a radical. Anonymous accounts online claimed she was destroying healthcare by holding people accountable. But she also got letters, hundreds of them, from nurses who'd been fired and then vindicated, from families whose loved ones had survived because someone finally listened, from medical students who said they'd chosen nursing because of her example. She kept every single one. 2 years after the Riverside case, Emily was promoted to lieutenant colonel. The ceremony was small, held at Fort Lewis with General Lawson presiding. Hayes was there in dress uniform. Rodriguez came down from his new post in Alaska. Malik drove up from Millerton. Even Dr. Lindstrom attended, representing the hospital that had once tried to destroy Emily's career. Lawson pinned the new rank insignia on Emily's uniform and stepped back. "Colonel Carter, you've done something remarkable. You've changed the way this country thinks about patient safety. You've given voice to people who had none. And you've proven that doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything, is never the wrong choice." She saluted. "It's been an honor serving with you." Emily returned the salute, throat tight. Afterward, there was a small reception. Hayes pulled her aside. "I wanted you to know," he said quietly. "I'm going to med school, starting in the fall." Emily blinked. "Seriously?" "Yeah, figured if I'm going to be alive because of you, I should probably do something useful with it." He smiled. "And maybe I can be the kind of doctor who actually listens to nurses. The world needs more of those. Thanks to you, maybe it'll get them." Rodriguez approached next, grinning. "Colonel, sounds good on you. How's Alaska?" "Cold, but the unit's solid. We've been using your training protocols. Haven't lost anyone yet." "Keep it that way." "Yes, ma'am." Malik was last. He handed her a wrapped package. "From the staff at Riverside. They wanted you to have this." She opened it. Inside was a framed photo, the entire ED staff standing together in front of the hospital entrance. At the bottom, someone had written, "Because of you, we're still here." Emily stared at it, vision blurring. "You changed that place," Malik said softly. "You changed all of us." That night, Emily sat alone in her apartment, bigger now, actually furnished, with photos on the walls and books on the shelves. She'd finally unpacked, finally allowed herself to believe this life was real, that it would last. Her phone buzzed, a text from Barbara Hensley, the Portland nurse. "Just got promoted to charge nurse. They asked me to help develop new whistleblower protection policies. Thought you'd want to know." Emily smiled, typed back, "Proud of you. Don't let them forget why those policies exist." Another message came through, this one from Rachel Torres. "Grant Memorial just hired 20 new nurses. Ratios are finally safe. Patients are noticing the difference. Thank you for believing us." Emily set the phone down and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. She thought about that night at Riverside, about the seconds ticking down while everyone stood frozen, about making the choice to step forward, knowing what it would cost. She'd lost her job, her reputation, her sense of safety. But she'd found something else. She'd found her voice, her purpose, her place in a fight that was bigger than any one person, any one hospital, any one moment. And she'd learned something that would stay with her forever. The system only changes when someone refuses to let it stay broken. When someone stands up,
even when it's terrifying, even when it's lonely, even when it feels impossible, because silence protects the system, but truth protects the people the system is supposed to serve. 6 months later, Emily was invited to speak at the National Nurses Association conference in Atlanta. 5,000 nurses filled the auditorium. Emily stood backstage, listening to the introduction, feeling the familiar anxiety creeping in. She'd done this dozens of times now, but it never got easier. The moderator called her name. Applause erupted. She walked on stage, stood at the podium, and looked out at the sea of faces. 3 years ago, she began, I was a night nurse in a hospital that didn't want me. I worked the shifts no one else wanted, took care of the patients everyone else ignored, and kept my head down because that's what you're supposed to do. And then one night, everything changed. She told the story. Not the sanitized version, not the inspirational speech version. The real one. The fear, the doubt. The moment when she'd almost walked away and let that patient die because it would have been easier. I didn't step in because I was brave, she said. I stepped in because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. And that's the thing they don't tell you about doing the right thing. It's not heroic. It's not comfortable. It's terrifying and messy, and it will cost you more than you want to pay. The room was silent. But here's what I learned. When you speak up, you give permission for others to speak up. When you refuse to accept what's broken, you create space for something better. And when you stand up, even if you're standing alone, you're never as alone as you think. She paused, looked around the room at thousands of nurses who'd lived their own versions of her story. So if you see something wrong, say it. If someone tries to silence you, get louder. If they threaten you, document everything and find people who will fight beside you. Because this system, this broken, exhausting, impossible system, only works when we refuse to let it fail. When we remember that our job isn't to follow orders, it's to save lives. And sometimes saving lives means refusing to stay quiet. The applause started slowly, then built, then became deafening. Emily stood there, overwhelmed, watching 5,000 nurses rise to their feet. She'd thought this moment would feel triumphant, victorious. Instead, it felt like responsibility, like a promise, like the beginning of something that would outlast her, outgrow her, become bigger than any one person could contain. And that was exactly what it needed to be. After the conference, Emily flew to Millerton one last time. She hadn't been back since leaving for D.C., hadn't wanted to. Too many memories, too much pain. But there was something she needed to do. She drove to Riverside Regional and parked in the visitor lot. The hospital looked the same from outside, brick facade, glass entrance, the emergency department sign glowing red in the afternoon sun. But inside, everything was different. She walked through the ED, now bustling with adequate staff, proper equipment, patients being seen promptly. Nurses moved with confidence instead of fear. Doctors consulted instead of commanded. The culture had changed, slowly but visibly. Lindstrom found her near the trauma bay. I heard you were here. Thought you might be. Just wanted to see it, make sure it's stuck. It's stuck. We're not perfect, but we're better. And we keep working to be better every day. Lindstrom gestured toward the bay where Emily had run that code 3 years ago. That gurney's still there, same spot. We kept it as a reminder. Emily looked at the space, feeling the weight of that night settle over her. Reminder of what? She asked. That one person can change everything, that standing up matters, that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, is always worth it. Lindstrom met her eyes. You taught us that, and we're not going to forget it. Emily nodded, unable to speak. They walked outside together. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. Patients and families moved in and out of the entrance, most of them unaware of the battle that had been fought here, the lives that had been saved by someone refusing to be silent. What happens now? Lindstrom asked. Where do you go from here? Emily thought about the letters on her desk, the investigations in progress, the nurses calling for help. The hospital's still broken, still hurting people, still waiting for someone to care enough to fix them. Wherever I'm needed, she said, for as long as it takes. Emily drove out of Millerton as the sun disappeared below the horizon. She thought about the nurse she'd been 3 years ago, scared, uncertain, trying to disappear. And the woman she'd become, scarred but stronger, tired but unbreakable, carrying the weight of a fight that would never truly end. Her phone buzzed.
Another message. Another nurse. Another hospital falling apart. She pulled over, read the message, and began typing a response. Because this was the work now, not saving one patient, not fixing one hospital, but building something that would outlast her. A system where speaking up didn't cost you everything. Where nurses were believed, protected, empowered. Where patient safety mattered more than politics or profit or pride. It would take years, maybe decades. And she wouldn't see the end of it. But she'd seen the beginning. She'd lit the match. And now it was burning, spreading, impossible to put out. She pulled back onto the highway, driving toward whatever came next, knowing one thing with absolute certainty. She'd been fired for doing her job, vilified for refusing to stay quiet, threatened for exposing what was broken, and she'd do it all again without hesitation, because some fights are worth losing everything for, and some voices refuse to be silenced. Emily Carter had found hers, and she wasn't done using it. The end. The quiet ones, the ones people overlook, dismiss, underestimate, those are the ones who change the world. Not because they're fearless, not because they're perfect, but because when the moment comes, when everything is falling apart and everyone else is looking away, they step forward. They do the work. They tell the truth. They refuse to let injustice hide in the shadows. And they pay the price. Always. But they also set fires that can't be put out. They start movements that can't be stopped. They prove that one person, standing alone in the right moment, can shift the course of history. Emily Carter was never supposed to matter. She was the night nurse no one noticed, the voice no one heard, the person everyone assumed would stay quiet and disappear. Instead, she became the match that lit a revolution. And somewhere tonight, in a hospital where staff are overworked and patients are being ignored, another nurse is standing at that same crossroads, wondering if speaking up is worth the cost, if anyone will listen, if anything will change. This story is the answer. Speak up. Someone will hear you. And when you do, you won't be standing alone. Because Emily Carter proved something the broken system never wanted anyone to know. The people they try hardest to silence are the ones they fear the most.